Hi. Hello, friends. It's me. I have not done a live stream in a long, long time. Well, I guess the last live stream I did was at the beginning of this month for patrons, but I haven't done a live stream for patrons plus Discord in a while. So that's what this is for the moment. I'm doing patrons plus Discord for now, but I might make this public afterwards. Good. Thank you, Crystal. That is usually my first question. Does this work? Although today OBS is showing me that my microphone is working. So, hi. So for those who are on Patreon and saw my video yesterday, I'm feeling like way better. You can probably tell because the video I made yesterday, I pretty much looked like I was on death's door. But now I have showered. I changed out of my bear onesie because it was disgusting. Oh yeah, this is gonna be fun, Scott. I think. So yeah, I'm feeling better, but you might still hear me being a little throaty. I might have to stop and get some tissues. We'll see. But so far, so good. Can I just say, I think the big game changer was a neti pot. It's been a long time since I've used one, and I was feeling like it was just this nonstop flow of snot coming out of my nose. So I got a neti pot and I used it yesterday, and I immediately felt a million times better. So I also used it this morning. It's so disgusting, which I pretty much love. So yeah, I thought that I would hop on, in part because, okay, so if you're not following me on Shitter, somebody on Shitter clued me in that this guy, attorney Tom, did a reaction to my recent video, Am I Too Smart for Jury Duty? Which, in the pinned comment on my video, I apologize for the title. I could not think of anything that wasn't rage bait. So this is kind of on me that this guy took the rage bait. So someone on Twitter pointed me at this video with no other explanation. I really didn't know if it was going to be positive or negative. Scott, get past the ick factor. It's life-changing. It actually hurt a little bit, the neti pot, at first. Like it hurt. I was like, this isn't helping because it like burned my throat, which was obviously already hurting. But once I got done, I was like, oh, my brain has room to think. That's how it works, I think. The snot presses on your brain and you can't think straight anymore. I'm pretty sure. I'm a neurologist, so just kidding. So I have done I've done one other React video in my life. Last year during one of the patron live streams, I reacted to a video that mentioned me, and I thought it went really well. Like, it was enjoyable, and I think I understood why it's such a popular format because it's pretty easy. I didn't have to write a script. I didn't have to do any thinking. Hey, Purple Domo. Thanks. Hi. Don't skip your speech class, though. You can always come back and watch. So anyway, this is my second ever React video. And this time, I think, because the other one happened in the middle of a patron-only live stream. And after that, I did ask my patrons, would you be okay if I made these public after the live stream? And a couple of people were like, no, I like this to be our little thing, which I get. So I never made that public. But this one is going to be public, I think. So don't reveal any deep, dark secrets in chat, because it might be shared. It's still just on my alt channel, but you know. So yeah, I thought I would, so I already watched this at 2x speed. But I thought that I would react again. I would watch it again and react. I had never heard of him before. I have heard of Legal Eagle, and Pope Hat. Those are the only other, I don't think Pope Hat has a YouTube, but those are the only like social media famous lawyers I'm familiar with. And obviously, like, I'm more familiar with Pope Hat. I don't know Legal Eagle, which is why, like, a couple of comments on this video, they were like, oh, you should have asked Legal Eagle, but that would have been weird. I don't know him. So, right, Joseph? Like, I've seen reacts before where it's like Inception, reacting to a react, and I just think that's very funny. This is lawyer Tom, right? Is his name Tom? I don't think his name is Tom. Is it? Oh, it's attorney Tom, right? Hey, Aldo, how are you? Oh, he's Team Johnny Depp. Okay, well, I didn't have any judgment going into this, so I was interested to see what he would say. So yeah, let's watch it together, and I'll tell you what I think.
Attorney Tom here, back with Spamuary. I'm attempting to make a video every single day for the month of January.
Yes,
there's only 2 days left, and honestly, I'm kind of excited. In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to a video that was posted on the subreddit titled, "Was I Rejected from Jury Duty for Being Too Smart?" by Rebecca Watson. As many of y'all know.
Hold on, I'm going to pause it real quick so you guys can tell me if you can hear him, if the volume is okay. Because again, I've only done this once before. It was a while ago. Oh, Matt Parker did something like this, reacting immediately to his own reaction video. That's funny. Oh, good, Scott. Thanks for letting me know. Matt's the mathematician, right? The British mathematician. He's friends with, his voice is louder than mine. Okay, I'll turn him down just a little bit. Because God forbid anybody be louder than me. I'll turn him down just a bit.
I have my fair share of trial experience. I've been around many trials. I've been in trials. I've been around jury
I'll put him at 50%.
Yeah, let's get started.
Let's get started. Oh yeah, it is Tom. Okay.
Earlier this month, I made the best
I don't
video of
want to hear myself though. That's kind of an issue. I'm gonna
it really takes the pressure off. How our professor of others worked hard.
I'm gonna zoom through me talking.
Everyone has Osborne's have become such excellent professional, or blast them out. If judge of spotting the science.
I got a little laugh there.
To exhibit a rational mind and knowledge of
science. Actually, no. The thing I was quoting got a
right
laugh.
From the get-go, this statement I agree with in the sense that there are a lot of hired gun experts. There are a lot of experts who have no business being experts, but they have their fake diploma, they have BS work experience. They are essentially professional experts who usually only work for one side, meaning if it's a personal injury case and you hire an accident reconstructionist and they always work for the defense side or for the plaintiff side, well, they're not really being...
Maybe I should have him on 2x. I get bored easily. I do, by the way, I'll put him on 1.5. Oh, you can't hear him as much now. Sorry. All right, I'll bump him up a little bit. I'll give him 0.69 because I'm a professional.
Bias. They're always tweaking their models to help whoever is paying them, and there's a pattern of that. The best experts are experts who don't want to come to court, who you have to beg them to step away from their job. Now, what I disagree on this sentiment is every time a hired gun expert is brought, it usually backfires in a bad way. That's because the lawyers get to cross-examine, and credibility is everything. And I've seen some experts look terrible and quite frankly lose the case for their client.
So that's an interesting claim, that every time a bogus expert comes on, it backfires. I mean, it's demonstrably untrue, because and I know I'm not the lawyer here. Like, maybe in his experience, that is what has happened. But in history, the U.S. court system is completely littered with pseudoscience, not only getting on the stand, but swaying juries to make terrible decisions because they don't know any better, because they accept that the expert they're being shown is in fact an expert. So, for instance, I did that video on 911 call analysis. That's a good example. They bring experts on to talk about that, and then that wasn't allowed, so now they talk around it. Previously, of course, there have been polygraphs that used to be admissible. There's blood spatter analysis that had a whole thing. There was a big to-do about fire pseudoscience. I remember reading like a long time ago. Hey, Don Pedro. So yeah, like maybe in his experience, when an expert comes on who is not on the up and up, they get destroyed, and that's great. But historically speaking, unfortunately, we know that it takes our system a while to root out pseudoscience and make sure people have fair trials. Yeah.
I don't take sponsors. The only thing I ask is that if you need a lawyer, contact firms that handle way more than cancer as a result of a bad drug or toxic options. If your case is not consultation.
Hey, what's...
Oh, and then there's another ad. Lots of ads.
I switched to H&R Block this year. They have a refund advance loan.
So, I sat down that day started to record common.
Don't need to see me.
That result and deeply humblings from scientists on juries. Because
lots and lots of me.
It came across to me as humble bragging.
In my experience, when you are picking a jury, a process called voir dire, and
so,
yes, we call.
I just want to say what's funny in this is that I know that like the whole point of my video was to be like, hey, this is how I used to think. But even when even when I I was actually first very skeptical of the idea that people were too smart to be on juries. And I think that I expressed that very clearly, and he does include that in this video. So it's a little baffling to me that I got so many comments on his video, and also they came over to my channel, and maybe we can go through some of those because they were very funny, complaining that I think I'm too smart for jury duty, and how egotistical I must be to think that. And it's like, that's what I said. I said that that's an egotistical claim. I said that. But, they don't pay attention to that.
It came across to me as humble bragging.
In my experience, when you are picking a jury, a process called voir dire, and yes, we call it voir dire in Texas. I know a lot of people in the comments say, oh, blah, 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 voir dire. In Texas, we call it voir dire.
That is hilarious, by the way. I didn't know that. The fact that Texas is so fucking dumb. Like, imagine... languages. I'm not a prescriptivist. Language changes. But that is so Texas to be like, it's actually also very British to be like, French? No, thank you, sir. I'm going to pronounce it in the dumbest way possible. And I'm going to insist that that is the right way. I love that. Like the first time when I moved to London and somebody called it a quesadilla, and I was like, that's a funny thing. I'm going to use that. Or jalapeno. Like they do the same thing to the Mexicans. But they're like dead serious. At least, especially about the French. Like any French word, you are gonna pronounce that like even herb. Like you can't say herb; they have to say herb. Delhi, that's great. Yeah, I find things like that very funny. So it's particularly funny that it even happens in our legal system. Like, no, we say voyeur dire here, voir dire. That's great.
Deal with it.
When you're picking a jury, your number one thing, the only thing that you care about, is you just want a fair trial.
That is not true. Press F to doubt. Like, does anybody, come on. The only thing you want is a fair trial as a lawyer? That can't be true, right? Come on. Okay, again, I am not a lawyer. I did do mock trial in high school. And the goal then was to win. To win at all costs. Fairness. What does fairness even mean in that respect? And honestly, when I hired a lawyer, I hired a lawyer. When Ben Radford was threatening to sue me for libel, I hired a lawyer based entirely on the fact that the lawyer I hired had previously beaten his lawyers in the largest defamation case that their state had ever seen. And I thought that was really funny. And so when I asked him if he would be my lawyer, he called me up and he said, your case is really interesting. I think you have a great case and I'd love to take it. But before I do, you need to know that we have very different politics and that might be a deal breaker for you. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I was the legal counsel for George W. Bush in this state. I'm a member of all this Republican stuff. And I said, that's great. And he said, really? I was like, yeah, I don't want a bleeding heart progressive lawyer. I want an asshole. So, yeah, Thomas, I agree. Fairness is both sides have a lawyer. Both lawyers are win at all costs. And this cancel out. Yeah. Versailles. I have heard of Versailles too. So yeah, I just doubt this. This seems like, what's the word that conservatives use as an insult? Where I can't think of it, where it's like you're just showing your moral superiority. I forget maybe somebody in chat will find it. Sorry, by the way, I am on Sudafed right now. So look up how Mainers pronounce Calais. I would probably mispronounce it, whatever it is. Not woke. No, it's where they virtue signaling. Thank you, Wajib, or Wajib in Texas. Thank you. Yes, saying all lawyers only want a fair trial when picking a jury is, I think, virtue signaling. There, I said it. I think lawyers want to win and will choose a jury. Well, later in my video, I do talk about somebody literally giving an example of picking a jury of dum-dums in the hopes of prosecuting some Muslims based on racism. So it's like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying that this is necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying that lawyers, I don't even know if I would say I believe that most lawyers just want a fair trial. I think they they might say they want it to be fair, but if fairness goes against them, I think they'll be annoyed and they'll be like, that's not fair. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I think they want to win. And if they can do that by making things a little unfair, and yeah, by example, I don't think it's fair that in that second trial of the Muslim fundraisers for Hamas, they purposely struck jurors for being too intelligent. That doesn't seem fair to me. But these lawyers did it because it secured them a win. So, yeah, I definitely don't think all attorneys just want a fair trial. And I don't even think most attorneys just want a fair trial. I think most attorneys want to secure a win for their client. Oh, I agree. It's unethical.
You weren't really looking for IQ, you were looking for bias. Do people show bias? IQ and all those other things are really secondary.
So, yeah, he's saying, like, as a lawyer, he doesn't look at IQ. Although, actually, he said he's looking for bias and IQ is secondary, which means he is still considering it. But, you know, later on in my video, I give several examples of cases where other lawyers disagree with him, but he doesn't address that.
You just want a level playing field. That's all you can ever ask for as a lawyer. When the case starts, do you have a level playing field?
So that's absolutely not true. You know, as my examples in this video he's responding to later on, which, spoiler alert, he never addresses. They specifically do not want a balanced playing field. They specifically try to balance the jury in their favor.
8 years ago, I settled down here in the Bay Area, and since I received close to
Yeah, that's actually happened to me as well. I've been summoned for jury duty 3 times, and I've actually had to only go to the courthouse and sit on a jury selection panel once.
they call more people than they need, and often they
This is so important. It's a huge issue, people not showing up to jury duty. I know I've made a video on this before in the past. Jury duty is a privilege. It is an amazing thing if you think about it. And the problem is if you don't show up for jury duty, Karen will. So when it's your time to be judged, whether it's criminally or civilly, do you want a bunch of Karens on your jury? Right?
You should go to jail.
I think Karen, by definition, doesn't show up. I think Karens, in general, try to get out of jury duty. However, the people that do show up, so, you know, some of the research that I looked into when dealing with this, which, again, he does not address at all, pointed out that the people who get out of jury duty may affect the type of juries you end up with. And so, you know, one big problem is because of, you know, for instance, low income people not being able to necessarily take time off to do this jury duty, you might end up with more privileged people on a jury. So there are things like that that directly affect it. And it's not necessarily Karens versus everybody else. It's a privilege. That's why we call it duty. They should call it jury privilege. Hi, Mick. Thank you. I am feeling a lot better. I slept most of the night last night. And at one point, Indy wanted to go outside in the middle of the night, and my darling husband got up and took him out. Normally that's my job, but it's not easy to, well, it depends, John. It's easy for me. Overneath, just because it's fun. I just thought it'd be fun to talk about. So yeah, but like, if somebody is a student, for instance, who can't miss class, if somebody is a caretaker for a baby or a loved one, like these are usually underprivileged people. who are let out. And that was, I think that was one of the conclusions of the study in Connecticut, I want to say, that actually that thought that maybe juries might be dumber than the general population. They were looking at education specifically, and they found that in fact the juries that they looked at were more educated than the general population. And I might be misremembering, but I think that one of the possible explanations for that is that, yeah, like the blue collar workers, the less privileged people got out of jury duty, you know, and that's certainly what that one consultant found in the first trial of those Hamas fundraisers. She specifically said that in that first trial, they let go a lot of people with financial hardships and things like that. And in the second trial, they fought harder to keep on people who had lower education, etc. Yeah.
Something.
In this case, I did have to report. So I went to the courthouse, and then we filled out anyone from but then they're close friends.
Blah, blah, blah.
I live. How much time
No matter, or maybe it was a civil matter involved. I don't think that's
had an experience with a police officer? I live in the United States. Literally everyone I know has had an experience with a police officer, most of them bad. How much time do you have?
So I disagree. I don't think that's a stupid question. What that tells me is that this was probably a criminal matter, or maybe it was a civil matter involving a police officer injuring somebody.
Really
but
funny
probably
to
a
me.
criminal matter. And again, you just want to know if anybody is biased. And if you say you've had an experience with a police officer that might have been negative, that doesn't necessarily disqualify you from serving on a jury. I'm sure the judge or the prosecutor or the defense will ask you, can you put your prejudice aside and say, hey, I know this happened to me, but can you be a fair and
Okay, so this blows my mind, and a couple of the commenters agreed with him on this, and I'm just like, is my experience really that insane? So the question was, have I, my friends, or my family ever had any experience with a police officer, positive or negative? You don't think that that's a ridiculous thing to ask? Like, I really don't feel like my life has been that different from the average American. So let me just throw this out there, okay? Okay, so I have an uncle who was a police officer, or a New Jersey state trooper for many years. I have a cousin who's a police officer. You know, I've had numerous interactions with both of them. My youth group leader growing up was a police officer who would drive me around in his cop car. I had fun playing on the radio, which he wasn't allowed to do, I think, but he let me, and it was fun. By the way, we're only up to me being 10 years old. As a teenager, I've been pulled over several times just for driving around after midnight. It was annoying, but never really a problem. All of my friends who had driver's licenses have been pulled over for driving around after midnight. I've been to several house parties as a teenager that were broken up by the cops. The police actually forced my brother. So one time I was, I think, 17. My brother was 21, and we were both at this big house party that got broken up by the police. And so there was a lot of underage drinking, and the cops pulled my brother aside, and he showed his ID, and the cop told him, okay, get out of here. And my brother said, I'm friends with the homeowner. We're both 21, and I was planning to sleep on his couch tonight. And the cop said, you can't do that. You have to go home. And my brother said, well, I've been drinking all night. I'd rather not drive. And the cop said, I don't care. You have to go home. So, so we had to drive very slowly home. John, who cares if it's standard? It's stupid. It's a stupid question. I'm only up to me being 17 years old. I got this much space to write about it. Like, it's a stupid question. Like, be specific. It's like, oh, it's standard. Well, it's still fucking stupid. So, like, am I really that nuts? You know, and then, like, so all of that was by 17. In my 20s, I was pulled over for speeding. I went to court and got the ticket dismissed. I have seen cops roughing up friends at protests during the Iraq War protests. I've been, you know, in crowds that have been hit with smoke grenades and stuff. You know, like, I'm just saying, like, in a space this big, you're going to need to be more specific. It's got nothing to do with me and my politics and any, like, bias I have against police officers, which is how this guy tries to spin it, and his commenters jump in too. Like, oh, well, they caught you. You have a bias. Like, no, I have a bias against sitting here for 5 hours, writing down every interaction me, my family, and my friends have had with police officers, good or bad. Like, it's a stupid question.
Partial juror. But again, when you deal with a panel that's sometimes 60 people, sometimes more, you don't have a lot of time. So you want to ask these questions. And
Oh, you don't have a lot of time. Do I have a lot of time to sit here and write every interaction I've ever had for a job that you're getting paid? The lawyers and the judge are getting paid to sit there and read my response. I'm not getting paid to detail every interaction I have ever had in 40 years with a police officer.
identify anybody who you can go and have these conversations with. Again, it's just about finding people who are unbiased. If you can wave a magic wand and get 12 people in a jury, they were all unbiased, then we wouldn't need jury selection.
Are there extra paid?
And yeah, so that implies that I'm against jury selection. No, I'm against stupid questions.
I can attach to this because I've got a novel to write.
Yeah, so if she has a novel to write because of her experience and her prejudice, then that is showing.
Do I have a novel to write because of my prejudice? So all of the things I just listed for you guys that happened to me before I became a legal adult, is that prejudice? like that is such a brain dead opinion.
A sign of bias. So it really, at this point, you know, it's not an intelligence thing, it's a bias thing. But of course,
and again, like, I wasn't, that had nothing to do with intelligence. The title of the video, you know, I was just describing my overall experience with jury duty because specifically on that previous video, people were curious. I normally would not have gone into that much detail about my personal experience because I know that it's just one data point. It's, you know, I would have just jumped right into the science, but I have a lot of viewers from outside the United States and a lot of viewers even inside the United States who have never served on a jury and maybe have never even been called to serve on a jury. So they don't know what the process is like. And so they specifically asked. So that's why this video, I open it up with a fairly detailed description of what I went through because that's what people wanted. It's got nothing to do with intelligence. I mean, Thomas, though, I am neurotypical. I just I'll include, once I finish with this, I'll include a link to his video in the description. I don't know what the Reddit post is. Did he say someone sent it to him on Reddit? All I know is, so somebody on Twitter sent me the direct link to this post. But it wasn't even like a compulsion to be complete. I guess I have a compulsion to be honest, which, is basically the end message of this video, is that, being overly honest is at odds, unfortunately, with wishing to serve on a jury. Hold on, I have to burp. There we go. Sorry. I'm drinking my Coke. I guess I'm on like amphetamines, so I maybe don't need this Coke, but is it weird that like I do feel really run down and tired? Is that just the cold, or is that the Sudafed too? Because the Sudafed should get me amped up, right? Anyway, so I mean, maybe I'm not as neurotypical as I think, but if you're asking me to list every interaction I have ever had, I mean, I'm going to take that literally, I don't think that's just me.
We don't know all of the story. Let's see how it goes.
Filling out the questionnaire, I handed it in and went home, but then I
Voir dire.
come back for a process that's known as voir dire. It's where
See, pronunciation, Texas, baby. Voir dire.
So
That is
they
very
called us all
funny.
into a courtroom, a number of reasons. They would lose to English, like a guy, and the judge spent like, for this case, no, Your Honor, fair enough.
So,
White people set up this entire system to oppress my people, which, fair enough, fair enough.
so let's just say hypothetically this was a case involving a white police officer arresting a black person. That's
It probably
that's obviously
was.
bias, right?
I was actually more annoyed with the judge for wasting everyone's time going back and forth with this guy, but I guess the point was to just let everyone else know that if you want to get out of jury duty, you're going to have to really work for it.
Yeah, so it's entirely possible that the judge did do that to send a message saying, hey, just because you might have an excuse, whether that be legitimate or not, doesn't mean you're getting out of jury duty that easily. What I've seen happen is judges say, okay, you're excused from jury duty, but you're still gonna have to spend the whole day here. You can't just get up and leave right away. You gotta.
So that's interesting. I think the judge, I actually don't remember if he sent him home, but it's the same sort of thing. Like, he's basically punishing this guy by forcing him to like argue about his racism for an extended period of time. And I think that guy did have to come back. I don't fully remember. I mostly just remember the very long argument about like, well, how racist are you? And he's like, super racist. And obviously I'm using racist, but because it was so comical, like he's talking about racist against white people, but I think he might have even said that he was racist against white people. It was pretty funny. It was just also like, come on, we all want to get this over with. But yeah, I definitely felt that the judge was like punishing him for blatantly just trying to get out of jury duty. Yeah, one day jury duty, waiting room prison. Yeah, it's like being held in contempt of court, but instead of going into a jail cell, you just have to sit there on those hard benches watching boring stuff happen.
You have to suffer through voir dire for the rest of the day, and then you can go home. Now, I'm not saying that's right. It's a very interesting dynamic because on one hand, jury duty is so important, and it's an absolute privilege to be there. On the other hand, I
Jury
recognize
privilege.
that
I
if you
love
need to take
that.
a week off work, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, or more, that can cause undue financial harm. It's just such a financial burden. Now, I've made videos about this in the past.
I
can
agree
wave a
with
magic
him.
wand. I would say that everybody on jury duty gets $500 a day from serving on jury duty. That way,
I 100% agree with him on this. As I mentioned, I've definitely talked about this on social media. It was completely silly that I didn't get paid for showing up for jury duty on the first day. It's only once voir dire starts that you get compensated, and then it was like $15 a day, I think. But parking all day was $17 or something. No, I think it was like It was less. It was like $8 or something. But yeah, it's like, so an 8-hour day. I'm basically making $1 an hour to be here, and I'm losing money on my regular job. And it's like, if we actually compensated jurors appropriately, I think we would very easily take care of a lot of the problems of biased juries, of juries composed of mostly white people, mostly wealthier people, privileged people, etc.
Anybody who might have a financial hardship can still serve on a jury. Now,
Situational
I've seen this before in
pedantic
civil cases
racism.
where both sides come together and they'll say, hey, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before we even get started with jury selection, this is going to be a very long case. Now, both sides, the plaintiff and the defendant, have agreed that they're going to pay each jury member X amount of dollars per day. So it's equal, it's not coming from one side or the other. So people can sustain and serve on the jury.
Anyone who hadn't answered questions fully on that initial survey or written up penalty case, which way the judge determined about science and critical thinking. The attorney, for instance, the defense counsel, learned that this must be guilty.
For intelligence, it's
Because why would they even be here?
right. So this person would be biased. It has nothing to do with their intelligence. It's their bias that.
Again, I wasn't talking about their intelligence, although, again, like as I talked about in my video, the idea of intelligence is problematic. What I'm really focused on is critical thinking as a possible way to be biased against jurors. Intelligence and education are problematic stand-ins for this idea of rational thinking, which is much more difficult to study and test for. Of course, it's okay to ask stuff. I'll respond in just a second underneath. So yeah, I will say, even though I wasn't sharing this anecdote, was not part of, again, like everything he's responding to here is not evidence for or against my rage bait title, Too Smart for Jury Duty. All it is my singular data point, which is a flawed data point by definition. It is merely my own experience. That said, not understanding the underpinning of our justice system being innocent until proven guilty does suggest a lack of critical thinking. At first, it could just be ignorance, but it was explained to this potential juror many times, and the fact that this person had presumably lived in the United States for an extended period of time, if not being born and raised here. I don't recall exactly. I think that it was a white woman with an American accent. Who knows? But even after it being very carefully explained to her, she just could not make the connection. It went on for a long time. And so, yes, actually, that does display a distinct lack of critical thinking. But also, it's obvious bias. Obviously. Like, somebody doesn't think you're innocent until proven guilty. Obviously, that's bias. And obviously, that's going to trump any issues with critical thinking. So, in the end, I point out that it seems that critical thinkers are mostly detrimental to prosecutors. But somebody who doesn't believe that a defendant is innocent until proven guilty, that is so wildly biased against the defendant that obviously they're going to be let go. So again, my final wrap up of that video is like, yeah, some lawyers do remove people, potential jurors, from the pool because of critical thinking. But it's not really that big of a deal. It's probably not systemic. there are probably many other things that take precedence. Obviously, bias against a defendant would be one. Race and gender are another.
They have a belief that
Oh, sorry, Overneath, you asked if I work at anything outside of YouTube, and no, blessedly, I do not. I used to be a copywriter more than 10 years ago. But then I quit my day job in order to just do this full time. I'm very lucky.
somebody's on trial, then they're guilty.
The prosecutor then asked if we would agree to evidence points, and this is the only one.
A couple minutes ago when so she's bringing up a concept called jury nullification, and she already briefly brought it up just a couple minutes ago when she was talking about the death penalty. It essentially means that, sure, somebody could technically be guilty under the letter of the law, but you don't agree with the law. Like, let's just say smoking weed is illegal and somebody's on trial for smoking weed, and you say, hey, smoking weed's cool, it shouldn't be a crime, so not guilty. Well, unfortunately, the role of the jury is not to determine what the law is. It's to apply the law and convict based on the facts.
So that's something that I address in my video. That is how our current system promotes juries, but it's not necessarily how juries were originally supposed to be in the United States, at least according to the Founding Fathers. Not saying that means, like, the Founding Fathers were wrong about a lot of dumb shit. Slaves, for example. Just pointing out that in our past, and as recently as the 50s, and actually there are very good examples, more recent, that a lot of people pointed out in the comments. I forget what it was concerning, maybe gay marriage or something happened in Canada. I'd have to go back and read those comments again when my brain's not so fuzzy. But anyway, originally, jurors were meant to be well-informed people who are taking an active role in the how our legal system operates. Over the years, through various laws and Supreme Court decisions and things like that, now it is presented as this is the jury's job, is to just know nothing outside of what the lawyers tell you and find for this law.
And then he asked me again, would I convict someone of a crime I didn't believe was a crime? And they handed me a microphone. And I said, no.
Yeah, so, again, that's their personal beliefs, and there's nothing wrong with people. You want people to tell you their personal beliefs. That's how you get an effective voir dire. That's how you conduct an effective voir dire. But in this particular case, she is biased, and she's probably going to be struck for cause.
I said I might be
I was not struck for cause.
wrong. Please correct me if so, but it is my understanding that it is my right as a member of a jury to return whatever vote I feel is fair, regardless of what the evidence shows. For instance, if I lived in a state where abortion was illegal and I was on a jury for a case against a doctor who had definitely performed an abortion, I personally would be morally obligated to vote not guilty, and I believe that would be my right. I think that's pretty much word for word what I said, which I only remember because at the time I was just frantically trying to avoid saying
Charles?
the phrase jury nullification.
Crazy.
That's the term that describes what I was saying. In the United States, juries have the right to vote not guilty, even if they think guilt has been proven beyond reasonable doubt, because they feel the law is unfair.
So I just want to be cautious of using the word right. There isn't a quote-unquote right for jury nullification. Now, a jury, after hearing all the evidence, can come in and perform a jury nullification, but you can't go into a panel with the intent of nullifying a jury regardless.
Or is being unfairly...
Okay, so this is a good point, and I should have chosen my words more carefully, because there are a couple of things happening here. So, and I should have chosen my words more carefully and also been a little clearer about this in my initial video. So, when I was speaking to the attorney, I was literally asking, like, it's my understanding that this is my legal right to do this. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And he did not, And so, I'm not a lawyer. So, I'm like begging the legal experts to make this clear for me. And they did not, which is their right. And there I've used right in a slightly different way. to mean moral obligation. So there's legal obligation and then there's moral obligation. So at the end of the day, I do think it is my right to vote an abortion doctor not guilty, for instance. Is it my legal right? That I do not know. I am not a lawyer. And, there seems to be a lot of debate amongst lawyers about whether or not this would be considered a legal right. I just realized that my face is covering up his face. I'm sorry. That was rude. So all you could see was me. So, I was asking legal experts for guidance on a legal right, while at the same time continuing to believe that I have a moral right. So to give you another example, I believe it is everyone's right to love who they want to love. And I would say that even in Uganda. However, in Uganda and other places, it is not necessarily a legal right to love who you want to love. So it is a distinction. It's an important distinction when specifically talking about legalities. And that's why I should have been more clear. At the same time, a lot of the comments I've received after his video went up this morning, or I don't know, after I noticed this morning, a lot of the comments have seized upon this to be like, you're an idiot. It is not your right to nullify a jury. And it's like, well, first of all, I wasn't sure if it was a legal right. That's why I was asking. And the lawyer did not contradict me. Doesn't mean I'm not wrong, but I asked the legal expert and he refused to say. And number two, I do believe that it is my moral right, and I will continue to do that regardless of what the law is here in the United States, because laws do not determine for me what is morally right.
Applied in that particular case. I'm not a lawyer, but I do think I understand this concept correctly, and I think all jurors should know that they have this right. But I've also heard that you can get in trouble for saying the words jury nullification in a courtroom or for trying to educate your fellow jurors about it.
Again, it's not a right. It can happen. Second of all, the only thing you were supposed to discuss with your fellow jurors is evidence of the case, not anything that you know from the outside, especially a concept like jury nullification.
So again, like this idea of what you're supposed to discuss, it's my understanding that there is no, I might be wrong about this, but, again, like back in the 1800s, it was understood that jurors would bring in with them knowledge already. And it was okay to share that knowledge. The only reason for being struck would be if a juror has direct familial or financial ties to the outcome of the case. I'm just quoting from one of the studies that I read while researching this video. I know that there are certain rules about what a jury is and isn't allowed to talk about, but I do think that it's a bit of a gray area.
Again, this is just we're trying to prevent bias. Bias swings both ways. You could have a police officer serving on a jury. They will probably be biased towards their fellow police officers. Then you can have an anarchist on the jury who's probably going to be biased for jury nullification no matter what. And there's a spectrum. That's all I'm trying to say.
My problem is that this prosecutor,
Hoplite, you reminded me of one case. It literally came out I think the same week that I posted this video. It was the trial of one of the nonprofits that was giving water to migrants, or maybe it was feeding the homeless. One of those bullshit things where authorities arrested somebody for doing a Christian thing, something that Jesus would have liked, and the jury refused to find them guilty. So, yeah.
like the judge with the anti-white guy would just not give up. He asked me the question again, but with slightly different vocabulary.
Yeah,
and
Thomas,
we stared at each
that
other.
makes sense.
I desperately did not want to be held in contempt of court, so I spoke very carefully, saying something along the lines of,
Yeah, Thomas, that's what I was thinking along the lines of as well. I think there's like, I feel like it's a little more gray when you talk about like, well, I'm a chemist, and what that expert said didn't really make sense to me. I mean, I don't know, like, what happens when a juror uses their own experience and education to come to, like, of course they're going to, that's what every juror does. You know, they use their own background in order to come to a certain decision. Of course, you want to put aside any biases you might knowingly have, but at the same time, we're all coming in. There's no such thing as an unbiased juror, you know. You can only get as close as you can. And so, yeah, that's one of those gray areas where it's like, yeah, put aside biases, but you're still going to be using your background in order to educate your viewpoint, you know?
I've described a case, right? And at that point, you don't have any moral objection.
Was asking her and
Laws against murder.
yeah, so she actually probably just rehabilitated.
Okay, so this is another
wrong.
funny thing.
And at that point, he just looked really annoyed, and everybody was silent, and it was awkward. So I added, I understand this is a murder case. I don't have any moral objections to laws against murder.
Yeah, so she actually
So it's very funny to me that he includes that part of my video, but his viewers did not notice it because I got a lot of comments claiming that I would approve of someone murdering someone else under certain circumstances. I would nullify a jury when I specifically said otherwise. Like, I don't approve of murder. Like, pretty clear, but you know.
probably just rehabilitated herself. I can assume what the prosecutor was asking her in the follow-up questions was a very precise set of words that is probably in a reflection of whatever the California.
He was not. He was literally just just asking me the same thing over and over again. It was kind of frustrating.
Rules of evidence use that explain how a jury can be biased for cause. For instance, it would be something like, okay, so juror number 23, what you're telling me is that regardless of the facts of the case, which we have not even covered yet, you're telling me that there is a hypothetical situation in which you could not follow the law as instructed because of your bias, or, you know, something like that. And then she then refuted that and said, no, you know, if you educate me and you tell me otherwise, I could do that. So
no, I volunteered that. He didn't ask that at all. I volunteered it. That's what was so frustrating, is that the lawyer seemed to think that if he just kept asking me the same question over and over again, I would get frustrated and give him the answer he wanted. And I did not do that. Although I did, you know, because I'm a people pleaser, I did offer that my view on murder cases as a way to make peace and to get this over with, which it worked.
she probably avoided being struck for cause. However,
And I
just
did
because
avoid
you
being
weren't
struck
struck
for
for cause doesn't mean that prosecutor isn't going to remember who you are and use one of their
Obviously, this is why I was struck. Obviously. Like, okay.
discretionary strikes
He
to
does sound
get you
like
off
Ben
the panel.
Shapiro.
So that ended the
Sped up.
questioning. I was allowed to stay. In retrospect, I think he was asking because the accused murderers, there were two, were planning a self-defense argument. So I guess maybe that
well
could come up.
over.
Somebody could say, well, they're guilty, but are they really guilty? You know, there's a
It's
set
probably for the
number of
best. Reddit
reasons
doesn't
why
usually
you can
like my
excuse them
videos.
and then dismiss that there while people gave money to the police union, objections to this juror, and then the defense would move to
Okay,
and then
actually, this is
usually things
another
like,
thing I
you wrote your questionnaire
thought
that you
was
gave
funny.
money to the police union last year. Would that bias you in favor of the police? And then they would say no, and so the prosecutor would say we have no objections to this juror, and then the defense would move to excuse them anyway.
Yeah, and that's totally fair game. If this person is a strong supporter of the police officers union, the defense might say, okay, even though they say that they can be unbiased, well, you know, how do we really know that? I would feel comfortable
How do we know that?
using a
don't.
discretionary strike to remove that jury from the panel as well.
Every time,
But
the
yeah,
rare
obviously
juror
that's
was
why
bland
that
enough to make it
person was
through this questioning,
removed.
they took a seat on the final jury, and then all of the people who were hoping to avoid jury duty would relax a little bit, because if 12 people get through before they're even called, they get to go home.
Okay, and this is a
By
great
the way,
time to bring up a fact.
I thought he was going to correct me there because I was actually wrong. It's not 12 people because there are alternate jurors too. So I think it's like 18.
That I think is drastically overlooked in determining whether or not somebody got on a jury or didn't get on a jury. And that is where you are seated in the jury selection panel. Behind me is a sample panel. You have juror number 1.
I don't know that this is drastically overlooked. I think anybody who's ever been up for a jury understands this. Yeah, like they choose you randomly to come up, and if 12 or 18 people get on the jury before you, then you don't have to serve. Like, that's actually pretty obvious, I think.
1 and juror number you randomly see 50 shots
boring.
of being on the jury. If you the way the jury selection works is it's the first 12. So you get to 60, there's probably going to be 12 people on.
By the time first time I'll do,
Quick question for you. Do you know how much you actually weigh? Well, this might sound
I
crazy.
do.
It's actually a little disgusting, to be honest.
Oh, is this
And a
about
lot of people
poop?
have to deal with it every day.
This guy is
But according
like a
to
poop
thousands
guy.
of
Way
I get
before,
these
even though in
commercials
Texas,
all the time.
deer in the headlights. The other potential jurors left.
okay, that is so funny, and I've totally felt that way before. Even though in Texas, there's a different procedure on when you announce your strikes. I spoke to the prosecutor in the case that the one time I sat on a jury selection panel, and he asked me 2 questions, and I could tell that they struck me like that, and I had to sit there all day. And then, of course, when it came time to read what jurors were excused,
So that is how I felt waiting to be called. I was like, you know, we went back and forth about the nullification thing. I know I'm not getting on this jury, despite the fact that I said that I would not nullify a jury in a murder case. Doesn't matter, you know, because of my knowledge or my bias. Like, these things go hand in hand, which I thought I made clear, but I guess not. But yeah, like, I had to wait until they were dismissing without cause, you know, and so I wasn't surprised to be dismissed. I just thought it was funny that, unlike everybody who had been called before me, they didn't even say hello. How are you? They were just like, nah, next.
I was not shocked at all. But again, that's their right. They have the discretion. They have discretionary strikes for a reason.
He's saying this like it's news. It's not news. I know they have discretionary strikes. I knew I was going to be struck. I don't get this kind of smugness about it.
So I said, thanks, have a great day, and I left. So yeah, part of me is an important concept for be the kid caught with a bag of...
Regardless of what she's proposing, I would argue that
Right.
You can help that kid caught with a bag of cannabis.
Oh yeah,
Doctor
so
in Texas go free.
Here's
You
why the commenters all thought that I'm
can
pro-murder.
to disrupt unjust laws. Yes, you can be the person who let an abortion doctor in Texas go free. You can free the guy who murdered the priest who molested him 20 years ago. You can help that kid caught with a bag of cannabis avoid the school to prison.
I was just naming gray area cases. I wasn't saying I'm pro-murder of pedophiles. Although I understand why angry YouTube commenters would be very offended by someone who's in favor of murdering pedophiles. I get it. But just to be clear, in this case, I was merely listing potential cases where a reasonable person might be interested in overlooking the law as it's written.
okay, so again,
He's so
regardless
frustrated
of
with me.
what she's proposing,
The
I would
zoom
argue that it
in.
had nothing to do with her intellect. It had to do with her perceived bias, even though
I don't understand why he's continuing to make this argument when I wasn't even making it. Will I say here that I'm in favor of pedophiles being murdered? I mean, you can cut that out of this if you want. Put it on TikTok.
so she said that she could be unbiased, and she very well could be. But you know, you get that feeling as a lawyer that, hey, is this somebody that I want to use my discretionary strikes on? And that's almost certainly what happened.
There are prison abolitionists and other activists who support jury nullification in all cases simply because the justice system is so screwed up and biased. And they suggest people hide their views and their knowledge specifically to get on juries and then nullify them.
I don't know why he's laughing there. That is, if you Google jury nullification, you will find organizations whose sole goal is to teach people how to be sneaky in order to get on juries and nullify them.
Biased. And they suggest people hide their views and their knowledge specifically to get on juries and then nullify them. I am not...
Okay, so Rebecca is right in the sense that the best way to get onto a jury is to be quiet. If you are quiet and don't talk about your opinions or your bias, that is how you get on juries, people. I mean, the people who are outspoken about their bias, about their prejudice, those are the people who get struck. With that said, I do have strong feelings about the concept of simply being quiet even though you are biased. I think it's people's obligations to talk about their bias so you can get an unbiased jury. Okay, that's it for today's video.
So this is the point where I was disgusted. Like, up until this point, I was like, okay, well, he's just reacting to my anecdote. He's watching this maybe for the first time. He doesn't realize that I understand that anecdotes aren't appropriate ways to come to a conclusion about something, and that you should balance your personal experience with in-depth research and talking to experts. So once he gets to the part where I do that, the video will get better and he'll be like, oh, wow, she agrees with everything I'm saying here. Not only does he cut it off here before I get to the research, but he specifically cut me off mid-sentence. And this is so disgusting to me. Let's watch it again.
Simply because the justice system is so screwed up and biased. And they suggest people hide their views and their knowledge specifically to get on juries and then nullify them. I am not...
Okay, so...
I am not one of those people, is the sentence that he cut off after I said I am. I said, I am not one of those people. The problem I had getting on that jury was being too honest. But that's because I fundamentally believe in being honest. And it is disgusting. Like, this isn't just a case of, like, he ran out of time for the rest of the video where I talk about research and I cite legal experts. This is him cutting my video mid-sentence to imply that I approve of people lying about their biases in order to get on juries, specifically to fuck with juries. And that is fucking disgusting. Oh my God, Andrew. I didn't even notice that in the background, his phone number is 855 Tom wins. Why isn't it 855 Tom just wants a fair trial? 855 Tom wants a fair trial. Call today. I will not choose jury members to balance things in favor of myself. So yeah, like it's funny. I clicked on the video, a little unsure because I hadn't yet seen the toxic slime that had infiltrated my own video. So I wasn't sure which way this would go, but as I was watching, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's fine. Like, he's saying things that I say later on in the video, but maybe he just hasn't gotten there yet. It's fine. But this ending sent me, like, it was so sloppy. and so underhanded. Like, I'm not going to say he's a bad lawyer, though, because honestly, this is what you want in a lawyer. You want someone who's going to bias the audience in favor of the argument they're making and against the person that they are up against. You don't want a fair look. You don't want me to finish my sentence, because that fairness would actually bias his audience against him. So yeah, like the way he actually ended this video directly contradicts everything he said at the beginning about how we all just want a fair trial. No, you don't. If you wanted a fair trial, you would have finished my video. You would have shown the rest of my video. You would have shown that I'm saying all the same things that you said, but you didn't do that. And we know that it's not because you just ran out of time. We know that because you cut me off mid-sentence. Nobody stops a video in the middle of a sentence and says, no more time. Sorry. So, what's this about Tylenol-related autism lawsuits? Do I even want to know about that? Jeez. Don't send me down another rabbit hole. So, yeah, that's, so this video is already over an hour. I think, I was also considering going through some of the comments, but they're pretty nasty. I'll sum them up. I'm a narcissist who thinks she's too smart for everyone, and I'm smug, and I don't know what rights are. Yeah, and like, I didn't cut him off wait, did I cut him off mid-sentence? I did.
Rebecca is right in the sense that the best way to get onto a jury.
Oh, you know what?
Juries and then nullify them.
Ready?
I am not.
Okay, so Rebecca is right in the.
And that's our video, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Attorney Tom admits I'm right.
The sense that the best way to get onto a jury is to be quiet. If you are quiet and don't talk about your opinions or your bias,
well, let me know, Thomas.
Juries,
let me know what that
the people
is
who are
all about.
outspoken about their bias, about their prejudice, those are the people who
lawsuits.
get struck. With that said, I do
Sounds-
have strong feelings about the concept of simply being quiet even though you are biased. I think it's people's obligations to talk about their bias so you can get an unbiased jury. Okay, that's it for today's video. Bye.
Wow. I'm also in favor of that, Tom. Wait, was that his name? It is Tom, right? Because we have two Thomases in chat. So I'm like, wait, did I just say Tom because I'm talking to Toms? Hey, Har. Sorry. Yeah, you're at the end of it, but you can go back and watch. I'm going to make this video public and throw some ads on it just for funsies. But yeah, that's it. I will not be subscribing to Attorney Tom. His fans are horrible. It's actually, I was thinking about it and I'm like, my God, if someone made me aware that my fans were going and doing that to anyone that I had criticized, I would be embarrassed. Like, oh, it did say Tom right behind him. And there's another Thomas. There's so many Thomases here. Yeah, Thomas is last name. Yeah, like, sorry to pull another, guys, don't do that. At the risk of getting Richard Dawkins angry, guys, don't go to other people's channels on my behalf and call them narcissistic bitches. It's embarrassing. It would embarrass me deeply. So please don't do that. Yeah. Anyway, I'm feeling better. As you can tell, I actually just before this, I recorded a video. So I am going to get at least one more real video up for this month. My patrons have sponsored this live stream. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm going to put up that video later today for my patrons. It'll be public for everybody else tomorrow, maybe Friday. And are you kidding? Kirker is prison in German. Wow, that's some nominative determinism. I wonder if he knew. That's funny. Yeah, and I'm sorry, my brain is just made of mush right now. I'm a prosecuting attorney's wet dream. Can't think straight to save my life and will nod my head to whatever you say. Thanks for joining me, guys. Big shout out to patrons for being so understanding this month as I've dealt with various frailties. I am on the up and up, and I'm gonna come out swinging next week. So thanks for joining me, guys. I'll talk to y'all